we took out the additional parson, and I think he pushed back
Yeah,
on a
we
couple
did take
things,
that.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the thing is, like,
Let's go with the 190.
I know. See, because the thing with this group is, like, they'll tell me just wrong. They'll be like, "Oh, we need it." Like, she thinks we need it. But I'm
I
not
know.
saying that.
No.
It's nice, but human error is our biggest. That's anything.
Absolutely.
Like that's
Yeah,
like
that's what happened yesterday. Yeah.
I'd love to work that magic. Teachers are not really sitting at their desk monitoring. They didn't monitor that well.
Hello, how are you? Hi. Which is well, thank you.
So. And I think blindly follow.
Yeah, she's just
Like,
yeah,
'cause
believing that.
yes.
Right.
Holes or gaps, or say, you know what, I think you guys are good for this.
You all.
Or we could go. Yeah. So we'll see.
The tone of voice you keep using strikes me on the edge of like, like on the edge.
Like hysteria?
Yes.
Not quite there. Saying I'm not close.
But
That's the most she's had in a game yet.
oh yeah,
Michelle bought herself a new standing desk.
Yeah?
It's in my office.
She didn't like it?
She wasn't gonna.
What, like
Yesterday was
Q&A,
National
but
Police
just to kind of
but she wasn't gonna change it off her desk until Friday. So I'm like, I want to try it, and then just ordered it on the front.
and now you're tired.
Apparently,
Yeah, see, I think,
Standing for
like,
2
I don't know, like, I know I told her that, but I don't think I said. I know.
looking at it's a very different perspective.
Imagine.
I almost think she knows.
Kind choice of words.
Somebody-
Sitting there looking at it.
I was saying that to Brian, I'm like, oh, because. Yes.
So did you totally
Apologies.
remove your desk?
Basketball looked pretty
No,
good.
it's like a tabletop one.
Oh, so you can just.
Rossington's a good little
I
player.
think Paul signed
Actually,
it.
Do you know
turned
him?
it so it's against the wall.
Nice little player. He
We're looking at.
he's the
my
best
back
football
and
player out of Rugby.
Oh, gotcha.
Maybe that's the.
Yeah, like this. So I'm looking out the window.
He was actually the best player.
And have just about my desk
We can talk about it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
applications and using this.
I get still used to it because they play up.
Or if I'm emailing them that.
But now they're doing
The
a
new
middle.
social science standards, what are they talking
is
about
good.
as far as technology?
They could always have like.
Chairperson's remarks is item 3. I'm just going to remind you that we are meeting again tomorrow night, same time, 6 p.m., also here in the high school library, for the second half of the budget presentations. And I'm just going to make a comment real quick on the letter that Patty is passing around. If you notice, it's a little bit different from what I had last week, simply because when I went to MASC and talked to them, they said that the charter piece of that calculation is being handled slightly differently. I didn't feel comfortable in putting Newburyport's numbers, which are very charter heavy. I emailed you about that today, Paul, just so you had a heads up. North Andover, I think, there were a few other ones. I think Woburn were also very charter heavy schools. I felt like that number has a good chance of changing for them, even though it's not going to change for us. So I left our numbers in that letter and just took out all the rest of the numbers that were in there. Moving on to oral communications from the public. No takers. All right. Moving on to item 5, reports and deliberations. The fiscal year 2020 budget proposals, starting with middle school, high school athletics. Are you introducing this?
Yes, I just wanted to make a brief introduction. I don't believe this is new information, but I want to obviously thank the principals and Sean McGinnis, the athletic director, for being here this evening. But just to set the context, as we're doing this a little different this year, 4 or so years ago, we had 4 nights of presentations. In the last couple of years, it's been 3 nights of presentations. After last year, in the events of 2018, we'll call them, we decided to take a little different approach. Our goal and our as a leadership team moving into the fiscal 20 budget development process was to put down on paper, represent the needs, but not make them formal recommendations as our goal, and I've said this several times and I'll say it again, our goal is to simply maintain what we have. That if we can move into fiscal 20, start next September of 19, if we can move into next year with the exact same level of staffing and programming and services as we have today, we're not thrilled, but we would be ecstatic compared to the opposite, which would be reducing further. So as I've said several times, moving into this year, there were several cuts. Obviously, there were 24 individuals that were reduced. And so in making that, we've adjusted, we've adapted, we've figured out a way forward. It is not ideal. It is not even close to adequate, let alone something that we can say is exemplary, but it's something that we've found a way to make work. So that is the context with which you will hear presentations tonight. I just want to make sure that if there's any blame about that approach, that it goes this way. Because at the end of the day, obviously, there are many things that the principals and everyone who you'll hear from would like to propose that we add to the budget, but I don't think we're in a place to do that this year. So with that, I will hand it over to the very brief Sean McInnes.
And I'm just going to make a reminder, this tends to be one of the most watched videos online. If you can make sure you're using your mics, because the audio is only as good as the mic usage, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, I appreciate you having us here tonight. First, the overview of athletics this year. When we say that we did maintain in athletics. We still offer 25 varsity teams, 25 sub-varsity teams. We host 3 co-op teams, which means that 3 different sports have student athletes from other school districts that come to Triton to participate on our teams. That would be our ice hockey team. We have 1 student athlete from the Clark School. Our swing team has student athletes from Pentucket, Newburyport, and Georgetown. We are dominant, though, on Triton numbers. We do have more than 2/3 of the numbers. And lastly is boys tennis. And we co-op with Newburyport on that. We do send our student athletes out for 2 sports. Girls ice hockey, they go to Masconomic High School. And for skiing, they go to Georgetown High School. So realistically, we offer 27 varsity sports, but we house 25 of them. That was all based off of this year's budget. We also offered 13 middle school teams, which include field hockey, baseball, softball, cross country, boys basketball and girls basketball, and track. We also offered over 9 intramural and clinic opportunities for our middle school student athletes this year, which have been taken up on. And I'll go over some of those numbers just very quickly. In middle school participation levels, at this point in the fall, 28% of all students in middle school participated in a fall sport. I think we could have gone a little bit higher even at the current offerings, and we're going to look at how to readdress that from an athletic standpoint. In the winter, we have 12%. Winter is one of the toughest because realistically, you only can offer basketball because of facilities. And also what is tough is we can create teams, but you have to have teams to play. And those were the leagues. When we get to spring, we won't know where we stand until that point. However, just for last year, I stated the same thing last year. Last year, we went up to 16% of students participated in a spring sport last year. So we're expecting that to go up higher this year. Track is our largest, and we did have a state championship come out of the track team from last spring. If we look at high school participation levels, this year, already 66% of males at Triton High School participated on an athletic team. 53% of females participated on a high school athletic team. So that would give us a total of 229 males and 181 females. We are on track, if we maintain from last year's number, to have over a 70% participation rate again for just the second year in a row. We also offered clinics and intramurals this year. One of the clinics that we did offer was our free one-day clinics that was put out by some of the coaches. We will be following up with that again at the end of February and in March, some different coaches that would like to try it. This year, we had a total of 680 students participate in a clinic this year at Triton High School. We checked the numbers today. The academic year clinics, so clinics that are held within the school year, which are run by our high school coaches and student athletes, total of 164, and over the summer, 425. Intramurals, we run a running clinic, which is our running club and our strength and conditioning. We have approximately 70 student athletes doing that just in the winter alone, and that is just middle school student athletes. So in order to maintain that, we'd like to maintain for next year, I'd like to go over the budget numbers. If we go to page 4 in the budget handout, we will say we'd like to maintain, but we do have one change here. If you notice, our current staffing level is at 69. We've gone up to 70. There's a athletics non-professional 1.0 that we would like to change. The net change on that is $8,000. What we would like to do is take the money that we are spending on an athletic trainer currently, which is under contract, and combine that with a 0.5 athletic administrator assistant to reinstate that position in a little bit. To put those two together would be approximately $40,000, 32 of which we've already counted out towards the subcontractor that handles our training opportunities. That is something that you do see at other schools in some fashion, but the total overall raise for our budget for that would be $8,000. If you go to page 5, you'll notice that page 5 and page 6 has the increased definitions. For the coaches, we're asking for an increase of $15,300. That is due to step increases for our coaches, as well as if you stayed at the same step, that would increase due to the contracts that we have out there. Our contracted services, we've asked for 3 increases, and that would be things that we're forced to pay for. That is our ice time is now $250 an hour. Our pool time goes up to $95 an hour. And the contracted services, we would be reducing by $32,000. So if that first position is approved and we take away that $32,000, it is a net increase of only $8,000. The officials increase, that is run by the state. The state tells us what we have to pay for our officials. That would be a 2% increase, totaling $1,145. And our transportation cost to keep up with the increase is $4,000. So when you look at this past year, our budget would increase in our general funds by $18,000 and the revolving fund by the matching $14,000. There's a difference there, because when athletics does get the transportation increase, that does not automatically have a matching increase in the revolving account. So transportation is one of the only funds that does not have a matching number. The only capital request that we've asked for is for a new scoreboard. If you've been in the gymnasium, we've kind of fixed it temporarily for this year. Both scoreboards are outdated. Not only outdated, the company does not make parts for them anymore. So we found a company that kind of works out of a van that collects the old parts. They came up, they replaced a lot of the parts to get us through this year. I think it's very serviceable. I think they did a great job, and the student athletes now have 2 scoreboards that work. The only problem is you're just waiting for that next shoe to fall, and we now know that that next shoe, the parts aren't replaceable. At this point, that is the budget request that we have for Triton and the recap. I would like to open it up for any questions of anybody that has, and prior to that, again, I just thank everybody. I'd like to thank our coaches and the parents and the student athletes for really working to make sure that we were able to offer everything that we were this year while maintaining our budget levels from last year.
All right, open it up to questions from the committee.
I just have a comment.
Dina? Sorry. Here, hang on a second. Oh, you got yours?
Yeah, thank you. I just think that it's important to note, which you did not mention, Sean, in your report you included that this past season all teams with the exception of one received the Academic Excellence Award. If you could tell us just a little bit more about that, because given the fact that we have so many students involved in athletics, I think it's important to show that there is a connection between school involvement and academics.
Absolutely. We take very strong pride in our academic success in athletics, between the student-athlete academic support center after school to the coaches making sure that we check into it. This semester, I just finished sending out all my letters to all the student-athletes that made the honor roll and participated in a sport, and wrote a hand letter on each student. And the Student-Athlete Academic Award, now that is, they've all received the gold. All but one received the gold, and the other team received the silver. And that is from the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. When you have students that are involved in athletics, you find that they are more prioritizing. They're able to set up schedules, be able to construct their studying habits, and they also get pushed by their teammates in classes. And they also have that feeling of belonging when you're walking around the halls, and that shows into the academic success too, because you start conversations around your academia success. A 3.0 or above qualifies you for the gold. A 2.8 and above qualifies you for the silver. We had one team that received the silver. They ended up with, it was just over 295. So we were just short again for receiving a 100% gold awards for the academic success. And not only with that, just to add to that, we also had a team, we left this out, but we had a team win the Cape Ann League. They were undefeated in our cross-country team. And tomorrow night, we have a chance to win our first ever school Cape Ann League titles for both boys and female swimming. So there is that time. We are having some great success in participation levels, academia success, as well as success on the playing fields.
I just ask you, I know this is something that we've revisited a bunch of times, but just because I know this is a well-watched thing, just talk about user fees a little bit and how the programs are supported in part by user fees.
Sure. So we have user fees, which are $350 for a high school student athlete, $250 for a middle school student athlete, and we also offer waivers, financial aid waivers, that we follow the guidelines set by the cafeteria, by the food services. You either get a half waiver or a full waiver, however that is. Without those fees, athletics could not survive. When you look at athletics, it is more of a structural deficit whenever you start budgeting for athletics, and that's unfortunate to say, but everything costs. And the fees, when you think about the fees collected by the student athletes, don't even cover half of the operational costs for the athletic program. So that's why it's very important to have those fees coming in, as well as the general operating funds, being able to match those so we can actually survive. And I think that the way how this school district is doing it right now, it allows that to keep the fees at a standard. I've been here this is year 6. We have never had an increase in the user fees. I have seen other fees go up in most districts. There was one district that did have a decrease in fees. However, the user fees definitely help us survive, and they need to help us survive because of how athletics is structured. And the more student athletes that are participating, yes, that user fee does go up, the amount that we get. However, the cost to operate that does go up as well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dina.
Since Nerissa asked about the user fees, that brings up another question regarding the stadium usage and rental of that. I didn't see anything in here regarding the rentals of the stadium. How are we doing with that?
So the reason why you didn't see it in my budget doesn't affect my line items. That actually gets operated through the district office and goes to certain fees. We reach out to some communities. That's part of something that athletics has taken on, is to try to reach out to certain groups to see if they're willing to rent it. I know that in the spring, athletics did end a little bit earlier. We did have a rental that came in the evening hours. Our student athletes were able to get home. So we're trying to plug in as much as we can. I know that rentals are going out all the way through the summer. We're already getting calls for that. And as we get going here and more people realize that, yes, we are serious, we want to rent it out, that we're open to say yes to anybody that can come in and work with the availability. And Chris Walsh and the facilities teams does a tremendous job with the online portion, and that's requesting the site. And then he works with us to make sure that it doesn't affect our student athletes and the community. And we definitely view the community first. So any of the community members that have reached out saying they would like time, we have them fill out the form and go through the process.
Great, thank you. I
So
just wanted,
just to confirm, those funds are put into a separate revolving account and were intended to be used for the maintenance of the stadium. Unfortunately, over the 5, 6, 7 years as we were going through our process, everyone else built one too. So the demand is not as high as it was when we started the process.
and after I had said that, then I realized it would be separate from
You
this.
spent a few hours dealing with that, too.
Just once or twice. I just do think that it's important for the public to know that you are actively pursuing rentals.
Oh, we absolutely are. We have the time slots that are open, and anybody that calls me, we tell them about the process, how to get it done quickly, and we've reacted very quickly on some things where people say we need a place within 3 or 4 hours, and if we don't have student athletes there, we try to help them secure that facility.
Great, thank you.
One last question, if I could, Sean, before you move on. The capital improvement request that's in there, is that $17,000 just the scoreboard, or does that include wiring, install? Is that all inclusive of all the work that would need to be done, or is it literally just hardware?
That is for replacement of both end scoreboards. So when you're in the gym, you have a smaller scoreboard when you walk in and a larger scoreboard on the opposite end. That would include the parts, equipment, installation, and service plan
Okay.
for both of those.
All right. Any other? Oh, Maureen?
Quick question about the scoreboard. Do you know the age of the current scoreboard? Do you know how old it is?
The one on the far end is original. The one when you walk in is original, and the other one, I was told, is approximately 20-plus years. Those were original technology from a company called Fairplay.
And we should note that we've had other discussions about other possible donors who might be interested, so certainly that's on the table. There's no commitments, but that's also being pursued.
Any other questions from the committee?
Can I just clarify 2 things, just to make sure? So and I don't know if Catherine wants to speak to this, so the request for $8,000 new dollars takes $32,000 from the existing trainer, makes the trainer half-time clerical. Currently, we're taking, there's 2 in the high school office, we're taking one of them for half of a day to go upstairs. So that, Catherine would be, I just wanted to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Catherine, when she gets to it, she'll support that as well. And then that thing, just to note, last year, we leased, and I don't know if this is a Michelle or Sean question, we leased 2 white buses. You remember the smaller buses? So that's going.
I have stats on that if you'd like.
Oh, I know you have stats. Don't give me stats. So let's just go some feedback. That's working. That's saving money. That was a good plan, yes?
Absolutely. And it's not, as we presented, it's not just athletics. The special ed department uses that van 5 days a week. And we have another group that uses it 2 days a week. We've used it for field trips. The math team has used it for their events. Teams have used it. Today we went to Amesbury on a bus. We didn't have to pay the $250 bus fee to get that team there and back. And it is covered under our lease. It's $12.50 per month. And we have 2 of them. And when we look at the savings, I'll just give you real quick, very quick.
He couldn't do it.
You asked.
Right.
The golf team usually does 10 trips away on an average of $250 to $300 a trip. I'll go small at $250. That is $2,500 for 2 months. That covered the lease of the one van, and that's before any other team used it. Most teams have used it, and as we're coming down to the end here, both girls and boys basketball will be using it, and as we come down to select track and wrestling, they will be using it as well as field trips. I know have used it from across the board.
Questions? All right, thank you, Sean. Appreciate your time here tonight.
Thank you.
Moving on to Newbury Elementary.
Good evening. So I'd like to draw your attention to the executive summary on page 2. The school council is requesting a few positions. I don't have them included in my budget, but they are hopes and dreams that eventually we will have these positions at Newbury. The first one is our math specialist to go from 0.5 to full-time. Our math specialist now is shared between Newbury and Salisbury, and the main purpose that we've done so well in our math scores is that her coaching with teachers. She also provides some intervention for students, but a lot of what she does is enrichment for students, Math Olympiad. She runs those groups. She trains parents so they can provide those math enrichments for the students. She also comes in before school. We have online math league, and we're recruiting parents to help with that as well. And just the assessments and leading data meetings, we really could use her full-time to make a big difference. We continue to improve our instruction with Math in Focus, and one of our initiatives that we're doing this year from our Outcomes of the Math Implementation Team is our UPS Check. It's a problem-solving bulletin board that we have where students solve problems, they bring them down to me, and we put them up on the bulletin board, and they get an orange ticket for solving the problem. And that would not be happening without our math coach. She does an exceptional job, and so that is a position that if we could bring to full-time, it would really impact more students. Another position is our 0.5 reading interventionist. We have students who require Wilson, a multi-sensory explicit instruction for reading, and we're finding more and more students that need that instruction. To teach Wilson with fidelity, it's a 45-minute lesson. And we have some special educators who teach Wilson, and our reading specialist. Our reading interventionist could also be utilized for that. And we're finding we have more students, and we don't have enough time in the day with some of them to fit it all in. So that is a great need. We also would like to see eventually a social worker at NES. We continue to have students with social emotional needs. And that position would also be a resource to not only students, but to families, helping families find outside resources and really to provide targeted instruction for students who need more intensive time with someone, more time that our guidance counselor can provide. The guidance counselor sees students, but we're having an increase of students every year who have more social emotional needs, and we need more support, and support the families. And we're noticing in our building that we could use our custodian going from 0.5 to full-time. It's not as clean as it has been in the past. The custodians work very hard. We haven't even got into the winter months. It's a large building, those of you who have been to Newbury, and having that position go from 0.5 to full-time would make a big difference. And I just want to commend our custodians for being down 0.5 a custodian in the work that they've done. They work very hard. I have one custodian who works extremely fast. We're thankful for him. Keeps the building clean. And then new request that hasn't been in my budget before, this year we implemented a makerspace room. It's up in the science lab. It's open 6 hours during the week. I'm up there for the 6 hours with parent volunteers. And I've had some wonderful parents who come on a regular basis. The children are doing STEM activities. The enthusiasm is unbelievable. Days when I close it, students come up to me in the hallway and want to know why they can't come up to Makerspace. And I'll say, well, you know, it's only opened on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but that does not satisfy some of them because they're working on big projects, creating things. We could use a STEM teacher. In our Makerspace room, we have 2 3D printers that aren't being utilized. I actually have a 6th grader who's training me in how to use them, and he's going to train the other students. The computer lab, as you all know, is right next to our science lab. We're not utilizing this the way we should be. We have a library media specialist. She's trying to cover library classes and do technology classes. If we had a STEM teacher, they could also go into the Makerspace room and do more creative projects, not with just students who are choosing to come at recess, but all students in the school. I have about 60 kids who visit Makerspace on the days when it's open, sometimes more. Sometimes when it's cold out, I have new students who come in, and once they're in there for one time, they're coming at recess time. So the Makerspace is opened 3 days a week, only at recess time, and students have 20 minutes. And if I invite you all to come over and see the space, to see what the students are creating. The majority of the students, I have more girls coming to Makerspace than I do boys, and I think it's a wonderful thing that they're learning to do STEM activities, and the science, technology, and engineering is something that we really need to make sure we have in the schools. It's really benefiting the students. The only other thing I want to share with you this evening is that we will have a reduction of a teacher going into 3rd grade. Where our 2nd grade currently has 3 sections. There are only 42 students, so moving into 3rd grade, we will be reducing a teacher, and we'll have 2 3rd grade classrooms of 21 students, which is manageable. So I wanted to point that out as well. Does anyone have any questions?
Yep. Go ahead, Dina.
I just want to say that when my kids were at Newberry Elementary many years ago now, we had a similar situation where we went down with the custodians, and I personally saw the impact that that had. And I know how hard that staff works. I know how hard the teachers try and keep those rooms clean, but these kids deserve a clean environment to learn.
Any other comments, questions? Paul?
I just have a quick question on page 4. That graph. At the top, is there a typo where it seems like all the years are the same?
The 3 right columns should be 1920.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Any
Yes,
other?
there is, Paul. Thank you, Brian.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Beth. And we're moving on to Pine Grove School.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. First, I'd like to start out by introducing the co-chair. My co-chair for the Pine Grove School Council is Mo Lavasser. Thank you for coming, Mo. She's our community rep, and I appreciate her being here this evening. Similar to Beth, I'm not requesting any major budget requests. It's basically a level-funded budget. But in my executive summary, as Beth did, I would like to point out several of the cuts that we have experienced over the years and how that has impacted teaching and learning at Pine Grove School. The reduction of the math specialist from 1.0 to 0.5 over the last several years has had a significant impact on learning, as the number of students requiring severe or major interventions, we're not able to do that. As you know, the Math in Focus program features a unique pedagogy that involves visualization, problem solving, and hands-on learning. A 0.5 math specialist makes it very difficult to be consistent in supporting teachers with professional development and coaching opportunities. As I mentioned, it decreases the number of students needing intensive interventions as well as small group instruction for kids to be able to close the gap and maintain their grade level understanding and knowledge with skill and content. Similarly, the reduction of the reading intervention from 1.0 to 0.5 has also decreased supports available to students, teachers, and families in regards to literacy, teaching, and learning. We are seeing more and more students struggling in reading and writing, and we can't offer them the appropriate supports due to the lack of staffing. Therefore, the reading specialist has had to absorb this reduction in intervention support, which impacts her ability to provide professional development and coaching opportunities to teachers. As Beth mentioned, and as many of you know, I have continued over the years to request a full-time social worker. We have several challenging students with significant mental health issues. The current guidance counselor works with all 500 students and many, many staff members. We are wearing many hats when it comes to dealing with mental health issues. I'm not an expert in that field, and on several occasions, I'm left with the decision to make the determination as to whether or not a child who we believe is in crisis needs to be sent to the emergency room in an ambulance. And again, that doesn't feel good, but it would have been very helpful to have a social worker to collaborate with us on those decisions. Again, mental health is not my area of expertise. The elimination of the full-time technology teacher has placed a burden on the library media specialist who now teaches 2 curriculums. Trying to merge 2 curricula naturally leaves out key elements in each one with both the library and technology skills that impact student learning. In particular, keyboarding skills for our 3rd graders that now have to take MCAS on the computer or the Chromebook. That's basically what was in my executive summary. In terms of, I had mentioned, I have no major budget requests, and the good news is I'm not requesting any capital spending increases because we are in really good shape finally at Pine Grove School with the renovation. Any questions?
Questions or comments from the committee? Paul, can you grab a mic? Yep.
So you mentioned the new dyslexia law, and you say it's going to be difficult. Is it even going to be possible to meet the requirements of that law with only 0.5? My understanding of the time required is that it's going to be fairly significant.
It will be a challenge.
Maureen?
I have a question I think could be for... Yep, I'm working now. It could be answered, I think, by either of the elementary schools, and it's not an ideal situation, but can a social worker position be shared between elementary schools?
I believe in one budget request, we did do that a couple of years ago. I mean, it would be helpful, but I know you've got significant kids with mental health issues, and my population of challenging students with mental health issues is growing at a very high rate.
Right.
I could just say, so that's a position that everything we do, we try and be proactive, but is it safe to say that's a fairly reactive position? Generally, that person is providing assistance in a situation. So in the times when they're most needed, we don't know when that is going to happen. We know entry at the beginning of the day is tough, sometimes the end of the day, sometimes the middle of the day. So could it work? Absolutely. Any help is more help than we have, but that's not a model that I think is yeah.
Given budget constraints.
Yeah. Be something.
Question.
Jim?
With that in mind, just explain to me, since I'm the new kid in the block, do you have adjustment counselors and social workers, or do you use adjustment counselors here?
So we have an adjustment counselor, so elementary specifically, we have an adjustment counselor at each building, and then we have a social worker in addition at Salisbury. At the middle school, we have a guidance counselor and a social worker.
Right.
At the high school, we obviously have several guidance counselors and 3 social workers? 2. Sorry, I was adding one in my head. And 2 social workers.
So the issue that's growing is how to handle the children that are becoming difficult through the issues at home, et cetera.
It's, we keep using the term social and emotional. I mean, it's mental health. I think it goes beyond.
That's the new buzzword.
Yeah, it goes beyond adjustment. It goes beyond challenging.
But that's the challenge to the district.
Unequivocally.
And given the logistics of the schools, it's kind of difficult to have a floater is what I think I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely, yeah, and we have the principals here for a reason, so anyone that wants to jump in, please.
I'm a, a firm believer that if Beth and I don't want to speak for you, but I know we've had these conversations, if we each had a social worker, that may alleviate some of the issues that occur up at the middle school and in the high school, because if it's starting at the elementary level and we can't help them at that level, middle school and high school is stuck with it.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Can I just ask one, and this is, again, up to all the elementary school teachers, but I think this goes to that point. Approximately how many 45-day evaluations do we have elementary students go on during the year? Maybe this is a Dave question.
There's 2 right now.
Can you use your mic? Sorry.
We have 2 at the moment, but I think last year there was close to 4. So it fluctuates between, I say 4 would be a very high rate, but typically around 2.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to field that
What is
question?
it?
Just a
The
quick
question was, what is it?
explanation of a 45-day evaluation.
A 45-day assessment is when the team agrees that we need more information. So we contract with one of our collaboratives to send the student to participate in their school program for, it's either 40 to 45 days to get an idea of what they're going to need. So ultimately, would like recommendations for how could we get the student to return to our school? What do we need to do? But to be honest, if once they have got to that level, and the school and all the schools really go above and beyond trying to sort of keep kids in, and we have consultants that come in. Once they get to that level, it's almost too late. Students rarely return once they participate in that assessment period.
Jim?
Brian, on Medicaid reimbursement, is there a way of stretching that? No.
Yeah, that'd be a Michelle question, but I don't, at least in the last,
Is
it's changed in 2.5
reimbursement
years.
going up? And if there's a way of, because many of these issues, as you indicated, end up in emergency room, what have you.
Right, yeah, no, Medicaid reimbursement program has actually been changed this coming year for FY20, and we're not sure what that's going to do to our reimbursement, so we're not even sure if we should be level funding it at this point, so it's...
But the assumption is it's not going up.
No, I don't believe
anticipate,
so, but
no.
I don't know if it's going to drastically
Yeah.
decrease. I'm
Yeah.
hoping not.
Yeah.
But how are these students accounted for then on your reporting? I mean, if in fact, there's X amount of students between the 2 schools that have to seek, say there's 20 students a year and 12 of them require hospitalization, do you categorize those in any of your reporting that might generate funding or not? Can you?
There's really no way. It's as long as a student is Medicaid eligible, we receive a reimbursement. It doesn't matter what their classification is. So there's really no way to flag that instance, per se.
Isn't it, unless this has changed in the past couple of years, isn't it like a moment in time? They can take a snapshot a couple of times a year. Is that Medicaid that I'm thinking of, right? That they do it that way?
That's one piece of it, yes. Okay. But that's not.
So it's literally the services that you're providing on that day
That's more of a
capture is-
testing.
Okay.
The snapshot piece is actually a
Okay.
testing
Okay.
to make sure that we're doing what we need to do.
Okay.
The actual costs are the full year costs.
Right.
The only additional funding mechanism is a circuit breaker.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's when you hit that 4 times the foundation, so it's at 48,000 before you're going to get any reimbursement.
The reason I say it, and you mentioned the buzzword, that's throughout the Commonwealth, and it's just
unequivocally.
Just be interesting to explore how to generate some outside funding to offset that social work.
Absolutely.
That absolutely is.
And it's got to be, not going to get into state stuff, but as with the Foundation Budget Review Commission, the FBRC recommendation is just funding the formula. It doesn't rework the formula to account for what existed in 1993 when folks wrote a decent formula. Is very different than today, 25 years later.
You can't include that position in SPED, can you? I'm forgetting. Can you?
A social worker?
Yeah.
We have social workers, and certainly when we do our EPIMS reporting,
Right.
we can code a portion
That's what I'm
of
asking,
that
yeah.
as much as we
They're
feasibly.
not listening at DESE. I'm just
Exactly, yeah. But no, anything legit that's providing IEP services.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I'm just trying to think a way out loud how to
Yeah.
help that.
Yeah. More money.
I will say that the governor recognized that there's a significant mental health need in the Commonwealth in his supplemental budget last year. I cannot remember what the original number was, but it was quite high on the grants that he was going to provide. And then the final number that came out of the budget after the House and the Senate had taken their look at it, I believe was $12.5 million. So that's not going to go very far when you think about the size of the Commonwealth and the needs of the students here.
And it has to be an operating.
Yes,
It can't be,
yes, that's true.
Those were grants to do
Right.
certain things. It's got to be an operating cost year over year. We need these positions in and not have them come in and disappear. So
the cost of providing what they're asking for is, you already have 1.5, is that what you're saying? You have
We have-
0.5?
So at the middle high school, we've got 3, and then there's one at
But to
Salisbury.
cover the 2 other schools.
So that would be 2.0, 2 individual.
And you have what now, just 1?
0 for the 2 of them.
Either, 0, okay.
Only at Salisbury, yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Of course.
While I appreciate the idea of a floater social worker, the problem with that is if the social worker is in Beth's building on Tuesdays and Thursdays and I have a student in crisis on a Tuesday or a Thursday, that's not going to help me, but I do appreciate. And the other thing is, quite often these children that go out in an ambulance and go to the emergency room, they're back on our doorstep within 48 to
I know that
72
well.
hours.
I know that well. That's why I'm asking to get the people. Yeah.
For the general audience to understand that, and they don't come with a plan. We don't know what to do with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Christine. And we are on to Salisbury Elementary, please, for Jim.
Okay. Yes. Just to piggyback on the talk of, seems like the topic turned into a social worker, so I'm going to give you some data. And I think that part of my philosophy is that we should be a data-based district. I know we are a data-based school. I think we should be a data-based district compared to when we only have so much money. And I agree. I think that Newberry and Pine Grove should have a social worker. But my social worker talks to DCF 10 to 12 times a week, every week, for 40 weeks. I have 75% of students who have been exposed to trauma. I have 25% of homeless. I have 65% low income. Those numbers for data should be used to promote individuals who need a social worker or a school that needs more. And that's what Salisbury Elementary School needs. We need more. However, this is not a situation regarding the budget that I'm asking for anymore. But I'm saying that if there's ever any money, please look at the fact that we have 80% of incoming kindergarten kids in intensive, and I have a District 1.0 reading specialist. 80%, as 8 out of 10 kids, 16 out of 20, that have no letter recognition, and is put on the classroom teacher. We do have Title I, but look at over the years, it's been almost depleted. We believe at Salisbury Elementary School that Tier 1 is the most important tier that we teach. We also believe that reading is the most important subject. That does not mean that Tier 2 is not important, and that does not mean Tier 3 is not important. And it does not mean that math or social studies or science is not important. The fact of the matter is, reading is the most important. We have brought in the Bay State readers, or they adopted us from a couple of a couple in Gloucester reached out to BSRI Momenta, and we had a relationship years ago. Kim and I spoke to them. They liked what we did, and they came in. It was just too expensive, so they remembered us. I got a call last spring. So the couple from Gloucester donates $50,000 a year for this professional development, and the funding from Title I of $25,000 is put in, and that's a 3 to 5 year, every year, professional development. So this is a great opportunity for Salisbury, and I think it's also for the district because we're doing a lot of walkthroughs and we're seeing, I think, the beginning of great things. I did put in Title I budget regarding the federal grant, which is not part of the main budget. it's a school-wide, so I do have some flexibility regarding how I spend that money, and I will tab that for later. In the next page, I have broken down how many classroom teachers, special educators, and instructional assistants. And overall, I'm going to read this. It's like over the past 14 years as principal of Salisbury Elementary School, I have seen the percentage of low-income and homeless families increase, students with social and emotional issues rise, and a hike in children exposed to trauma. And throughout this time, SES has endured cuts both to the general budget as well as the Title I grant. I often ask myself, where would SES be if we didn't have such a generous PTA and community supporting our technology needs, as well as providing literacy resources for teachers, or if the SES staff did not go above and beyond on a daily basis for the students and families of Salisbury Elementary. I have the utmost respect for the superintendent and central office personnel, along with the school committee and what they stand for and what it provides for the Triton Regional School District. As we head into another budget season, it looks like our budget woes will continue. As principal, I'm not asking for an increase in staff nor supplies, but I implore you not to cut one educator or staff member from the SES family. Not one. Which brings me to the next page on page 4. You will see that the kindergarten has 4 classes. The general budget is 3. That 0.5 is used by Title I funds. So that would make it, if you go down to the total of regarding how many teachers, is 25.5. And next year, hopefully it'll be 25.5. I just didn't want to confuse anyone regarding that, that information. It goes with our philosophy. We understand the budget woes, we understand the situation, and we understand that we feel that Tier 1 is the most important, and I've said that since I've been here, and we're getting better, and we're bringing in momentum, and we're focused, and we want to keep things moving no matter what budgetary crisis that the district or the state might be in. And with keeping the classroom teachers and keeping the staff members exactly where they are, I think we're going to be able to do that. I feel very confident in that. That's it.
We'll let Jim take a breath and take questions from the school committee. Deb?
You mentioned a couple of times that you felt, you and the entire staff at Salisbury feel that Tier 1 instruction is the most important. Do you suppose we could tell everybody what that is exactly?
Yeah, I can do that. Tier 1 is basically you're focusing in on a classroom of, if you had, let's dream, you have a classroom of 10. Tier 1, you're focusing in on the 8. So basically out of a class of 20, 16. 16 are the individuals who are core. 16 are the kids who are at grade level. 16 are the ones that the classroom teacher is responsible for the 16. Then you have the Tier 2, let's say 15%, let's say 2 or 3 students, and that might be an IA, might be some support, but really, to be quite honest, the way that we're doing it, it's the classroom teacher. And then, or maybe reading specialists, math specialists, but it can be, in every grade level, it is also the classroom teacher. And then the Tier 3, the specialized instruction, the pull-out, Wilson is a special ed, and that's usually the 5%. So if the Tier 1 gets their job done, you're looking at 80% plus. That leaves 20% remaining for the rest. Those are good odds.
You have a question? Okay. Dina?
I have to say, when I was reading over this material in preparation for this meeting, I could hear all of your voices, and especially yours, Jim, because what you just read, I imagined in my head, exactly as you said it. I think the important point is, when I was going through all this, I can sense a lot of frustration, a lot of angst as to what we're going to do for this next year. And I feel that pain. I truly do. And I don't know what we're going to do about it yet. But I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate you advocating as much as you can, given the constraints that the superintendent has imposed for this year. Because I know if you were asking for what you needed, not what you wanted, this would be a different picture. One thing that I think is important to note, although Salisbury does have large homeless population and low income and everything else, I think it needs to be said that we have issues in our other 2 elementary schools as well. And I don't know if Chris or Beth, if you could address that just briefly so that, again, so that the public knows that it's not just localized in Salisbury, that this is something that affects students throughout the district, and that we need to look out for all of them.
I think it goes back to what Chris was really saying. The students who have mental health illness or dealing with trauma in their lives, it impacts their instruction. And that social worker can help with that. But if a child's coming to school who's experienced trauma and that's on their mind, educating them is very difficult. And I think we have a lot of children in the school who may even have experienced trauma that we don't know about, that we try to work on a daily basis in providing them as much support. But those are the students that might need Tier 2 or Tier 3 instruction, because in the classroom it can be very overwhelming for students who have experienced trauma, and it can be up and down with students. And you know, when Chris was talking about sharing a social worker, she's absolutely right. You do not know on a daily basis when a child's going to be in crisis. We have some students that we have a hard time getting in the morning, and we have a plan in place between myself and Mr. Jewett, my assistant principal, and Alicia Kenyon, our guidance counselor. We have teams that support kids, but just having additional resources makes a big difference for a child who's experiencing trauma and needs more support. And as I said, a child who's experienced trauma and has all these things on their mind, it's really hard for them to learn in the classroom. And I think that a lot of times we are failing students, because when it pulls me away from what I need to do as a building administrator, and it pulls my assistant principal away what he needs to do, it impacts the whole school. So that's something, I don't think we have enough support for those types of students.
Well said, Beth. As Beth did say, when students are experiencing trauma and having major social and emotional issues or challenges, research has shown that they cannot make themselves available to be educated academically. They just can't do it. Their mind is not prepared until we take care of, or with a social worker, helping them process and go through all of that. They're not available for learning when they're in a state of a crisis. And some of these kids are in a crisis for days on end.
Any other comments or questions? Linda?
I just want to commend all the principals. I know that as we go forward with this budget, people talk about our declining enrollments and that we can increase our children in our classrooms. But as you see, as we have a student population declining, they need more. Just because, I don't know, the budget's going to be tough this year, but we have to make sure that we're giving our students what they want. And if they need social emotional help in the schools, we should be looking to make sure that we're providing what they need in the schools. So as we go forward, I just want people to realize that as enrollments go down doesn't mean that you lose teachers. We have to make sure that we're funding what is best for our students.
Paul?
And it was said earlier too, those children in the elementary schools you're trying to help move up to the middle school and high school, where the problems are often of a significantly greater impact because they haven't been dealt with for 6 or 8 or 10 years.
Any other comments or questions? I just want to go back. I know we talked a lot about the social workers, but I'm just trying to remember as we were going through this, when exactly did we cut the specialists down to interventionists down to halftime? Do you remember? just curious, because I know you come every year. I don't know if you copy and paste out of your budget book from year to year, but it feels like it, because I know this has been a request for a long time, and I was just trying to remember when the last time was that we had a 1.0, that we had two 1.0s, really.
I want to say 2015 was when my full-time math specialist became a part-time math specialist and a part-time reading interventionist.
Okay.
Either 15, I think.
I think it was for 2016. Or
right.
We did that
yes.
in 15 for the fiscal 16 budget process.
Okay.
We would be going into our fourth year. Fiscal 20 is the fourth year of that reduction.
And that also includes, I had a full-time reading interventionist that became the part-time math specialist, part-time reading interventionist.
Go ahead, Dina.
And if I can just piggyback on that, in the meantime, we have put in a new math program that needs support. And we're seeing issues with reading in the middle school and the high school. So these are positions that are needed. They're not luxury positions.
And at NAS, I've never had a full-time reading interventionist. I've had a full-time reading specialist, but that position since I've been there has always been 0.5.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Deb?
I've had this in my head pretty much since we started speaking, and I don't know when the right time to say it is, because it applies to everything that's going to be said tonight, not just what's already been said. But we're getting to a point where school choice is going to be affected by what we have not been able to do or what we have not done. And we went through a great uphill battle trying to improve the numbers on school choice probably 12 to 15 years ago. And I was involved with trying to figure out why people had left and what we could do to change that, and we've made significant strides along those lines since then, but we are right on the brink right now of having it go in the other direction, and everybody needs to know that. Everybody at this table, I think, already does know that, but everybody out there needs to realize that unless we can support our students in a better way than what we've been able to the last couple of years, we are going to start to lose students to school choice.
And since there's an audience, and there may not have been an audience last week, so when I presented that report to the school committee last week, so we have 19 students choiced out this year that were in our schools last year. So, Deb, you use the may happen. I think we can... I don't know the reason yet. No, Patty's gone through and has gotten addresses, so I'm ready to start connecting with those families. So we can't say, I can't say with absolute certainty that the reasoning is because of the cuts, but the timing certainly is concerning. We have not gone backwards for school choice for students sending out in over 12 years. It's been steadily declined, and to increase that many students, and so that's 19 that were here last year, and the others are students who are going off to the virtual academies.
And that costs us money.
Significant money. So that $19,000 is, I'm sorry, those 19 students at face value is roughly $100,000. So.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? All right, moving on to the middle school. Al, you're up.
Hey, very positive conversation. Let me see if I can make it more positive. No. So I'm going to stick with a theme, and again, I'm not asking. I think last year I sat here and I said something along the lines in regards to the new schedule that it was a new chessboard, and now I need to figure out what to do with the pieces. I guess I'm here to say we have the new chessboard with the new schedule. We're working on the pieces. I just really would hope that we can keep the pieces we have, because it still is a work in progress. If I was here in a more stably fiscal environment, I would probably be talking to you again about very similar what we've been hearing. I'm very concerned about the challenges of students with social emotional difficulties, mental health issues. I have a student services staff that I was just sitting there doing quick math, probably 70, 75 years together as people who've worked in the field, and not only in education, but DCF, residential care, private practice, whatever. And we're at kind of the tipping point as far as what we handle on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, I could sit here and tell you numbers, but it's really not about a number of children. You can have a year where you have, you know, 300 kids in a grade, and the kids are good, and there's no problems. You can have 180 kids like we do in 7th grade, and 5 kids have significant issues. It's a whole different ballgame. They take a lot of time, they take a lot of nurturing, take a lot of communication with families and other service providers. And then through it all, we got to figure out some way to educate them. Having a student hanging out in our student services with our guidance counselor, our social worker is great, but it's not an educational environment. So at some point, we have to kind of get together and look at the middle school, we have to have some kind of program for those kind of kids, because I believe they can learn if we can support them in a way that all that stuff can kind of be put on the back burner for a school day, and we can support them through that, because I've seen it happen. Right now, we don't have that kind of program. We have some great special ed teachers that really pick up the slack and do some great things. We have great teachers in general that pick up the slack and do some great things. Some of the other things I've put in here that I would like to have is a computer teacher. We put in some computer classes in 7th grade this year, and they've been very, very popular. Kids really seem to like them. I'd love to do it in 8th grade. I have a tech ed teacher and a 8th grade special ed teacher that teach those 2 sections to 7th graders. I don't have a computer teacher to do that, and I don't have anybody next year to be able to spiral that up to 8th grade. That would be great to be able to do that. Similar thing with our wellness program. We put in a couple wellness classes in 7th grade. We have our our EL teacher / interventionist and our gym teacher teaching those, and it's great. They've done a great job with it, but I really think we should probably have a health teacher. Now, considering we put in sex ed, we've been borrowing Beth Nurse to do that. So, you know, it'd be nice to have somebody in the middle school that could kind of teach all that and do a really good job with it. You know, and then I put some things in here about foreign language instruction. We've lost a teacher last year. I can't give foreign language full-time to 7th graders anymore. It's only in 8th grade. I get a lot of heat from the high school people on that. It would be nice to be able to kind of offer that in 7th and 8th grade again. Without a 3rd teacher in foreign language, we can't do that. I guess that's about it. We've done a lot with our new schedule. We have a ton of ideas for next year, how to fix it and make it better. I was here not too long ago presenting that to you, so I won't get into all that again. Myself and the assistant principal were looking at that on a daily basis and taking notes on what we're going to change for next year. I think we can continue to do more with less. It means moving some people around and freeing some people up. And I think we have a plan forward to do that. So, you know, it's not easy being a principal these days, and you have to kind of be positive. So I try to always think about what can we do next year that's a good thing, because you always have challenges and you always have opportunities every year. I think it's about looking at the opportunities and dealing with the challenges, and that's what we'll continue to do. Thanks.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Wow.
Wow.
Well done. I guess you aced that one. Moving on to the high school, please, Catherine.
Thank you. And I want to begin by saying thank you for having us here and hearing us out. And also just to say it's nice to be back for a short period of time, that is. So I am going to kind of go through the executive summary, but I think the first thing that I will start with, since the focus has been talking about the mental health issues and the social emotional needs of our students, I think tomorrow night, David McGee is going to talk about a program that we want to implement at the high school. It's called the Bright Bridge Program, and it's a program which would allow for intensive academic and social emotional support to students who are returning back to school after they've been out on medical leaves, whether it's been hospitalization for mental health concerns, or it could just be being out for a broken leg for a length of time as well. But it's a program which will help those students transition back into the high school, keep them on track with their academics so that they don't get lost in the mush of things coming back into the program. So the special ed program is going to talk about, Dave McGee is going to talk about it tomorrow, because the cost of that program is going to be offset by one of our other special ed programs. But it sounds to me like the Bright program is something that it is an absolute need at the high school without a doubt, but it sounds like it's a need everywhere. But we're really looking forward to the opportunity to implement that program and really get it started next year. So I will leave it at that because I do know tomorrow evening Dave is going to talk a little bit more about that. I am not asking for anything additional in the high school. Please do not take that as the fact that we don't need anything in the high school. We are struggling. The staff at the high school is just beyond incredible. They will do pretty much what Alan just talked about. Every day, they're willing to come into school and be positive and know that there are challenges in front of them, but I don't hear complaints. And that is the most wonderful thing when I walk in the building in the morning, knowing that every day it presents problems and challenges, but they're handling them quite well. You will see that there is, I don't want to say it's a request for a science teacher, I just want to talk a little bit about that. This past year we have not had a physics program in the high school, which to me is an absolute sin that you would have a high school without a physics program. However, last summer we lost he retired, he was a .6 physics teacher and he retired late into the year. We were unable to secure a physics teacher for 0.6%. So we currently have 2 of our chemistry teachers teaching 2 sections of physics, but they're combined. So they're teaching CP and honors in one class. And then our AP physics, we had the opportunity for the students to take an online physics program through the virtual high school. We had 4 students who opted to do that, and it was awesome and it was great, but it was incredibly difficult. And so we currently do not have those 4 students taking the AP course through the virtual school. It was a little bit too much. I think if anybody's going to take a virtual high school course, you don't start with AP physics. But they gave it a go, and they did a great job. But so, and we also now, in order to make that happen with the chemistry teachers, we have 2 science teachers teaching an extra section each of biology. So with some rearranging next year, we're hoping that we'll be able to get the physics position back in place. It won't be adding a new position, but it'll be putting back in the positions the way they really do need to be. This year, we're working very, very hard on our NEASC self-reflection. In the fall, the NEASC committee, it's called a collaborative conference. There will be 4 to 6 individuals coming into the school to review our self-reflection report, which will be finished either late spring or very early fall. And the collaborative visit, so that's the only increase that you're going to see in the budget in terms of an actual dollar amount, and that was $2,500 for the cost of the collaborative visit to have them come in. I talked about the bridge program. Tomorrow night as well, you will hear probably from Deb Jones about the needs for technology across the district. And I'm just saying to support that and to second that request, that we are in dire need of updated technology in the high school. We need Chromebooks. We have MCAS coming up mid-March and then in May. And I'm scrambling now, counting Chromebooks, and I'm going to be going next door to Alan, and he borrows from us, and I borrow from him. So the need for Chromebooks to use daily in classrooms for educational purposes, but also so students are familiar with how to use that technology when it comes time to actually take the MCAS exams. If they don't have that on a daily use, they're not going to know what to do with it on an MCAS, and that will impact their scores. Along with technology, professional development goes with that. We have teachers that are very eager to use technology in the classroom to support learning and to enhance learning, but they're also very honest. And they say that there are many places and many times they don't feel confident enough in how to use that technology for the benefit of the students. So the professional development that really is necessary to go along with that increase in technology, having the technology equipment in the building is not going to do it. We really need to give the teachers the tools and the skills to use that for good teaching and not just to have a piece of equipment in the classroom. We have been asking for a health teacher for many, many, many years. You talk about cutting and pasting. We've been cutting and pasting for a health teacher at least 10 years, if not longer. So not only for the high school do we need a health teacher, but I think the whole district talks about the need for a comprehensive health program. But it definitely is a huge need at the high school. A few years back, probably 8 or 10 years, the state had given us a grant for an MCAS tutor. And that tutoring was put into place, and it really helped with students who were struggling or at risk for not passing the MCAS. And over time, that was depleted, and the school was not able to keep up with funding an MCAS tutor. We are finding that our scores are not up where they should be, and that our students really do need that extra support. So if we had the opportunity, we would certainly be asking for an MCAS tutor. The reinstatement of late buses at the high school, I'm hoping that comes up somewhere else within the district, but that if there ever is a request, I hate to use the word complaint, but a very strong request from the staff, it really is the reinstatement of late buses. So they're not asking for anything for themselves, they're not asking for anything for their classrooms, they're not asking for the world, but they want to be able to provide more for the students, and they're finding they're not able to get the students to come for extra help and to stay to get those extra things that they need to be successful because students don't have the transportation. So I give the teachers a lot of credit for really focusing on what they want for the students, and that is the ability to give them the education that they deserve. Some other additional needs that are outside of the really bigger piece, just if I was given whatever I would want to have or whatever I think would really make the school as successful as it could be. The English department, I think I would always be asking until I got it, and another English teacher. We lost a reading teacher, and right now what's happening is the English classes are becoming places where teachers are having to spend a lot of time working with students on reading. And at the high school level, an English teacher's not qualified nor capable of really teaching reading within the content of the class. And that's really impacting the curriculum, and it's impacting the learning for the entire class. So having another English teacher to either reduce the class sizes or to be able to make a reading teacher as part of the English department would definitely be an area that we would like to see happen. I talked about professional development. For history, the history department is going to be implementing the new content standards, and they're looking for some professional development, and they will need professional development in order to be prepared to implement those content standards. The biology, the science standards have recently been updated as well, and they're doing great, great work in our biology classes. I had a meeting with a parent after school today and a teacher, and the parents' eyes were really widened to realize what we're teaching in our biology classes this year. And the father said, those are things that I learned when I was in college. And it's true. Even the teacher said, yeah, I learned it in college too, but we've upped our game. And we need to make sure that our teachers have the tools necessary to teach the students what they need to know now in our ever-changing education. So they haven't had biology textbooks. They're 12 to 16 years old. So that's something that really, if I were to ask for textbooks, that would be the place that really is a high need at this moment. Our special ed program, we're always needing instructional assistants. This past year, our instructional assistants, they used to be tied to a particular grade level or to a particular special ed teacher, but we lost a number of IAs this past year, and so we were very creative in scheduling. However, the IAs now are no longer connected to necessarily a special ed liaison. They're much more connected per content. But what happens with that is when the student goes back to the special ed classroom during their academic support, the instructional assistant that was with them in the classroom is not with them. So the student really isn't going to get the additional support in the academic support classroom, and the special ed liaison wasn't in the class to really know what was going on. So we've had to do a lot of scrambling and a lot of sharing of IAs, and it really hasn't provided the students with the same level of support that they deserve being on an instructional ed plan. I feel silly asking for this, or just mentioning it, but it's been in the budget forever, and the Visual Performing Arts Department would love a clay recycler. That's all I'm going to say, but because it sounds so silly, but I said I would put it in because it's something that, in the end, if they were to have that kind of equipment, it saves money down the line because they wouldn't have to continually be buying the new clay for their projects. So down the line, it would pay off. I apologize that I had to say that, but I just had to say it. And then Sean mentioned a little bit about the fact that his he was proposing a full-time athletic clerk using a portion of his, help me, athletic trainer. And because this past year we've had to share our administrative clerk in the main office who deals with attendance, she deals with registration, she deals with parents coming in, and we have 2 people there, so we have the administrative assistant as well. But neither one of them, it is a very, very busy office. Neither one of them can leave their desk at any time, especially when the assistant clerk is upstairs helping in the athletic office. And then I just want to really make note that having her full-time next year is going to be incredibly important, more so than any other time, because I think, I probably shouldn't say this on TV. I think things are going to change, and I know we're getting a new principal. So I can't believe I just had to do that, but I hope people aren't watching. And I know they are. All right, I'm going to stop there, but because things are going to change, it would be really, really important to have a full-time administrative clerk in the office. Wow. So that's really important.
There's a very public high school search going on for a high school principal.
No, that's not the principal. It's not the principal. I know. I said I know there's something else happening. The other affected individuals.
All right, cool.
I probably really messed up, and I so apologize. I know. So in the last one, we have a lot of students now, and I've had some discussions with the superintendent and Mr. McGee. The number of students that are opting or needing to take credit recovery courses or courses online. It's growing significantly every time we turn around for various reasons, and there's no one reason, but a lot of students are taking online courses now to supplement what's going on in the high school, not just to leave us to go to a virtual high school. And it's become almost a full-time job. And so given the way that direction is going, the high school could really benefit from having an online learning coordinator, because right now it's being piecemealed to different people. And I have to say that a good portion of it is being done by Megan Ober, the Director of Guidance, and she is stretched out beyond being stretched out and continues to do a great job with that. But it is a need at the high school. Whether it's part-time to get started, it would certainly benefit the school as well. Thank you for listening, and if anyone has any questions.
Right. Questions from the committee, starting with Dina.
Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the virtual courses like the AP course, don't the students pay part of that, or what's the cost for that? Is there a cost?
Just for the AP course, we paid for that. The AP Physics course?
Right.
We paid for that whole course because we felt as though we didn't provide them with an AP Physics course in the high school, and I felt strongly that we owed that, so we paid for that. But yes, the FUEL-led credit recovery courses, students do pay a portion of that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Paul?
So, Catherine, I just have a question. Do you have a sense of the number of, percentage-wise, the number of teachers at the high school that feel challenged using technology in the classroom? Because that's one of the things you talked about. Would it be 40%, 60%, 70% that are comfortable, or
We're slowly getting newer staff, and the newer staff are more comfortable. I would say right now probably 40% would not be very comfortable using it. There are staff that are more veteran staff who are willing to learn from the current staff, which is a great thing because they practice. We're getting there, but learning how to use the technology in the classroom for educational purposes is a huge need.
Okay. And so I just have a comment I'd like to make about what Catherine said, and I really want to stress this, not so much to the people in this room, but the people in the public and the town officials that are here tonight. And that has to do with the late bus, okay? The school committee renegotiated a contract a year or two ago with the teachers, and I think there's been a sea change in culture in terms of the extra help that's being provided by the teachers. And I'm disappointed that Catherine tells us that some of the teachers feel as though there's not an audience, if you will, in large measure because of the school bus situation, the late bus situation. If the students can't stay after to take advantage of the teachers that are ready, willing, and able to work with them, we've done all of ourselves a disservice. And so I just want to raise that.
Paul, I feel like I need to, since we're like in a school, I feel like I need to Paul L and Paul G you guys. So Paul G.
I just wanted to comment. I see the spiraling. The elementary schools are asking for the increase in the reading specialist, and you're telling us that the English teachers are having to act as reading specialists in the classroom. So now we have a problem at 2 levels because we're not providing the services at the lower level, which also connects back to what you're saying about the social and emotional health.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Kim.
So when we think about some of the needs at the middle school and high school, and you look at some of the numbers of the student population, so we can anticipate that about 10% of our student body is going to have some, could be a reading issue, and depending on how severe it is. One of the things that brought to light some of the complications or some of the instructional needs are some of the iReady reports that have been recently utilized to assess students at certain times of the year. And so I think, you know, kind of offsetting, say now we have better information that helps us to identify those kids early on, continue to support them, and continue to maintain that support at a level, high level, at the middle school and the high school, but also giving them the tools within their staffing. Like Catherine had said, a reading specialist. I've tried to work with them, you know, off the side as putting on my reading specialist hat, but getting them to understand the complicated process it is, because it's not I can fix this. It's not. It's constantly being something that has to evolve and be supported. So again, there's so many things being said, and then you get a snippet, but there's just this whole background about it that you know, can't be told. The whole story can't be told here tonight. But I just want to make that connection to we're getting more sophisticated information with some of our assessments that we're implementing. But with that comes we need another level of sophistication of support for those students as well. I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Kim. Linda?
Could you tell me what kind of MCAS support we have for students that are struggling?
What kind of support?
Well, if you've seen that students haven't been passing or they're at risk of failing the MCAS as it gets closer to 10th grade, what are we doing for those students?
So with the MCAS, we teach the standards. So teachers should know which standards students are mastering and are not mastering. At the middle school and high school level, in regards to identifying the lowest 25%, which is one of our newest accountability measures. So this year specifically, the middle school and the high school did not receive that list yet. But I know the middle school has a list of those students who potentially could be, they're our lowest 25%. And so what we've done is we've given those lists to the principals to then distribute to staff to talk about what interventions are in place, what are we doing to support these students to make sure that they're making adequate gains. We do not have, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, anything outside of school for tutoring. And I think part of that is the high school has a new assessment coming up. So for 10th grade, other than teaching to the standards and the breakdown of where those questions are going to lie within those standards, we're not quite sure what it's going to look like per se. So we can certainly give support for the teachers and the students in regards to having them go through some of the trial runs with the online assessment and the practice tests. So that will get them familiar with the platform. As far as any additional tutoring offered after school in specific areas. We don't have that. We do have teachers available, but the problem then comes in, are there late buses to bring and transport those kids home? So again, it's a fix here, but a loss here. So.
Can I just add to that? So the MCAS tutoring grant that we initially had, it was specifically identified for high schoolers who had taken the MCAS and who had failed it, so we knew who they were, and also 8th grade students coming up who were at risk in the lower 25%. So when we first started the tutoring, that was the targeted population. So when I'm looking for an MCAS tutor at the high school again, it's not for everybody, and it would certainly be for those students who, and with the new assessment, we don't know what that's going to look like, but it would be for students who had failed, because that's a requirement for graduation. So it's much more essential that it happen at the high school so that we provide them as many resources as possible to pass the test.
Well, I guess the question that I'm also asking is, are we, not only for the kids who don't do well, but for all parents, to be able to give them information of where they can find MCAS, because you can get the MCAS questions, the tests, and, you know, online if parents are being given that information to help their kids who want to. Is the school providing information to parents, the ones who are at risk, of where they can go online to help their students as well?
I have not communicated that out as far as if you would like additional information regarding the MCAS or practice tests, here's where you could
Why wouldn't we do that?
We could do that. I mean, I think part of it is the mindset we're going to teach to the standards, right? And so you can have the kids practice. I just want any false hope in that if I have my child sit down and go through these practice exams, this is going to ensure a proficient. Where it's
just giving them, because I know for my own child, I know I'm one of those over-the-top parents, but that when he struggles with reading, the MCAS test, because they have to read a whole
3 now, like 2 or 3.
No, but I'm just saying they have to read something, and at the end you have to answer questions, or they have a prompt that they can, you get their mind thinking of a prompt that they can start writing, and just giving kids that other data point.
And I will say that all of the teachers, and I say all of the teachers that I know that it's been initiative at all of the schools because I'm shared on some of their documents, that they're looking at the type of questions and the, what's the word I'm looking for? The sustainability of the attention of the students to actually go through and have some type of graphic organizer and a system where they're going to go through and answer that question. It becomes very high level and sophisticated. So yes, a teacher could sit down with a child and try to have them go through some practice tests. But again, the level of the questioning when you get into 6th and 7th and 8th grade is so multi-layered that the teachers are unpacking those questions to look at what specific skills need to be addressed in the context of, okay, where is this on the standards and how are we teaching to the standards, and then how are we supporting the kids just to go through and answer this question? Because nowadays it's not just a written passage, it's like 2 to 3 written passages, or it's a video, and then the teacher most likely has some type of system like, okay, you're going to take this blank sheet, which is allowed in the MCAS. You're going to do a 2-column note. Here's where you're going to put. So it's that type of ongoing in-class instruction. And then when you have students that are not meeting that standard, the hope and the expectation is that the teacher is communicating to that child's parents to say, okay, here's where we are, and this is where we need to go, and here's how you can support it at home. Because in just downloading questions, I think that I don't know if that's the most effective way for all kids, and I think for those struggling, they need a little bit more support and guidance so it's a team approach between the parent and the teacher.
Thank you, Kim. You got to exactly what I was trying to get to.
Well, it took me 5 minutes.
No, just meaning of how much it takes for a teacher and how much support our students need, at the elementary, the middle, and the high school. So you hit it right on the head. Thank you.
Maureen?
No, I'm not saying anything.
I just have a comment about the biology textbooks. I feel like this is something that you've come a couple of years mentioning the textbooks, that they're old. I currently have a student that's taking biology, and I can say that the books are falling apart. Not only are they old and is the material old in the books, but they are literally falling apart. And this is something that I've heard from other parents that have students that complaining about the physical shape of the book that the students have. And my daughter keeps hers at home because she's afraid the moving back and forth, it's going to literally fall apart.
Right. And I do know that I asked for the textbooks because that's what they're looking at right now. And I do know that with the change in implementing the new standards, maybe a book isn't the way to go, or a portion of a book, but some of it being, you know, online or something that needs to change because what they have now is not meeting their needs at all. And it's also falling apart.
Literally falling apart.
Right.
Pages torn by.
Right. Exactly. Thank you.
Paul G.
If you're saying 12 to 16 years on the biology textbooks, the 12 to 16 years is the window in which we went from just a textbook to an online supported textbook to an online platform supported by a textbook, which really, at this point, those texts, when you buy them, are allowing for many different layers of instruction that wasn't there when these books were originally purchased.
That's absolutely true. Yes, that.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? I have one question that I think is a combo, probably Kim question too. I know in your curriculum and instruction, it talks about the history, civics standards that are coming in. I know you have kind of a placeholder in curriculum instruction. Is that going to include some of the professional development for the history department that is in?
In the PD section, that would fall under that.
Okay.
For the history, yes.
So literally what Catherine has in here is something that would be requested.
For the history.
The history
Yes.
and civics, right?
Yep. Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
As part of that.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
And they've already been going to PD and developing a deeper understanding, and they're very excited about it. So this has been ongoing, I want to say, for almost 2 years. So yeah, it's not like it's like a whole new thing for them in the sense where they have continuously and had ongoing PD around the new adoption of the standards.
Yep. Okay.
And I want to say there's also been conversation, and Ann is in the audience, and because I know she's been in conversation with the science teachers regarding their textbooks. And I don't know if, Anna, you want to provide an update on that, where they landed?
Grab a mic, Anna, please.
That's cruel. Studies teachers? Not the social studies, the science, the biology text.
Oh,
there was a couple different options.
So we haven't quite, we're getting that process rolling within the next month. So I've gathered some resources. We are looking at some physical textbooks, but most of those have an online component as well. Some that are just completely online, but really, you're right that they've changed significantly over the time since those have been published. So we're going to start a review process with the biology teachers, including special ed in that process, and EL as well, to make sure that we get something that's accessible for all students.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right. I just want to say before you all go, 2 quick things, I guess. One, I was talking with someone last week, and they said, so I hear you saying over and over again that year after year there are cuts that are affecting the district. How is the district still going? And I said, our staff has heart. We are running on heart. So thank you all, because the heart that you bring to Triton is what has kept it running over the years. Jim?
The past few months, I've had the opportunity to meet many parents and talk to different students at Market Basket. I always like to interview, where do you go to school? And what Alan said tonight about, and what you just said about the spirit of the people, I honest and truly, I haven't had one student or one parent say anything negative, and it's, haven't been around a long time. That's unusual. And I just wanted to compliment you all. You had someone singing. I think you paid this person to sing your praises. But I don't have any money. Not what I heard. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, because it's so nice when you say, where do you go to school? And they go, oh, I'm going to Triton. And they're just so enthusiastic. It's very, very nice, and a reflection on all of you. So I think what you said, Alan, about the warmth and the sincerity of your staffs is it's nice to point out. So thank you.
Use a mic, please. Microphone, sorry.
Despite the challenges, I think each and every one of us principals truly loves what we do.
Brian, did you want to comment? I have one more thing to say, but go ahead if you needed to.
No,
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. So my second comment was, and this I think just goes to Paul, and I feel like I'm constantly trying to reframe this conversation this year, but, and this is my own personal opinion, I will say that straight off. When we talk about having our town officials listen to us, that has been a conversation that's been going for many, many years about the budget process. In the last 15 years, the state contribution to Triton's budget has gone from basically a third to a fifth. In 15 years, our towns have picked up all of that difference for us. And while we have made cuts here, and while they have been hard, and while they have been frustrating, I think we need to reframe that in that while we're looking to our towns because they're the one place that we can get funding right now, it is really the state's fault that we're at where we're at. I know that's been my mantra for the last year, but I feel like it just bears saying over and over again.
And that we need to work with the towns to fight that battle, because as school districts alone, we can't fight the battle.
No.
Selectmen, town officials, mayors, town managers, all have vested interest in working with us to get that message through to the state. And you're doing it through MASC and Mars, and obviously Dina on the caucus, or it's not a caucus, the group, and through MASS. We have a legislative breakfast Friday morning with all area superintendents kind of north of Boston with our legislators to help them understand, because people see FBRC as the new ed reform, and we're just going to solve all the problems. And we literally, if people think that by putting $1 billion into the FBRC recommendations, or what's now the Promise Act, we get maybe $30,000 more per year than we're getting now. All that does, and if people then think, great, it's been 25 years since ed reform started, we now have another 25-year solution, this is going to look rosy compared to what we're going to be looking at. So I think that's an important point you make, Narissa, that there are needs, there are drastic needs, there are dire needs, but we have to work with our towns to fight with the state, because small towns can't sustain. And part of the discussion is MASS just put out a very nice little video from Mike Bonacani, the superintendent down out at Mohawk Regional. And for him, it's obviously rural. I think he said he has 165 square miles for 700 students. So that's obviously very different than us. But the point is, the Chapter 70 funding formula is founded and based on student enrollment. And if you are in a city or a town or a district that has declining enrollment, which many small or many non-urban districts are dealing with, then your state aid remains flat. So for us, I was just putting a chart together for Friday, we're 163,000 less in Chapter 70 state aid for this year than we were 17 years ago in 2002. And if you use the Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator, that 8.9 million we were receiving in 2002 would be $12.5 million, which would give us another $4 million bucks. Can you imagine what we could do with $4 million?
I would be checking the check boxes on every single thing
Absolutely.
that people asked for
Absolutely.
tonight, because, yeah.
So I guess the question is, do you want to stop there and continue tomorrow night with what we have? I mean, it's not super late. It's 7:45, 20 of 8. Or use that as a place to pause. I'm seeing lots of sit-backs and sure, I'm good to stop.
Folks, I don't know. I'm servant of the committee, so.
I was planning on being up late tonight.
Oh. There are other things you could be doing with your time, Paul. I know, this is good. Yeah, could be. It could be. I think there's bigger debates tomorrow night.
There are bigger debates tomorrow night?
Well, so I think
so that would be my question. We've been here for an hour and 45 minutes. I don't want to sit here for another hour and 45 minutes. So I
think we'd handle pieces, even if, we wouldn't do all four.
No, that's, I guess, what I'm.
Yeah.
I think obviously Deb Jones is not here this evening, so it can't be technology. I think special education is a big discussion. I think the operations is a big discussion. I think curriculum instruction, we would love for it to be a big discussion, but again, in line with the principals, what they're requesting, it's not a huge request this year, so we could have Kim present that. Again, the purpose and the principals will be back tomorrow night is our primary focus has been on the things we have to do, which a lot of them are in the chunk that what David will present and what Michelle will present. And then obviously we had a presentation last week on technology and provide some numbers to those contexts about things that we, some dire needs and some things that would be nice to do. But so certainly I think, if Kim, you're ready, Kim could be ready to go if we want to check one more box or
I don't have.
Whatever the group works.
Yes, yes.
One more box, one small box, and 3 big ones tomorrow night?
Yes. Okay. I'm seeing general yeses or at least no nos. So let's do curriculum and instruction tonight, and then tomorrow will be special education, technology, and maintenance operations and other.
And just to confirm, we did post on the public agenda, we did post all of them, so we had the opportunity just in case.
Yep.
Were you ready? Oh,
Cleaning off my readers. But okay. So actually my presentation or my executive summary very much mirrors some of the requests at the elementary, middle, and high school. So as far as not stating a need, but taking a step back and saying, even in the difficult budget years that we've had, we have been able to provide our students with updated curriculum. And I think that we cannot understate the cost and the PD that is associated with those new curriculums. So we have Math in Focus, which we're in year 4 of, K through 8. Last year, or actually this year, we implemented STEM Scopes and Inspire for grades K through 8th. The school committee approved the purchase of these high-quality programs. In addition to, which I already stated a little bit about, is the iReady, which is an adaptive online reading assessment that very much mirrors what our MCAS scores look like. So again, it is a really great preventative way to look at those kids who potentially could be at risk for not passing that high-state test. It also helps teachers to plan interventions. At the middle school and high school level, we talked about the need of having a wellness teacher or a coordinator. We have teachers definitely who have a lot of heart and passion around making sure our kids are educated in the area of health and wellness. And Emily Sheehan, who is our EL teacher and our interventionist, kudos to her, because sometimes it just takes the right person with the right demeanor and the right approach to middle school kids to make something extremely successful. And she has done that with the support and help from Tara, who is the nurse at Newberry. And so when you say it takes a village, in the times where our budget does not provide all of the wants and the needs, it is taking a village to bring the right people together to kind of, I don't want to say piecemeal, but provide some type of quality wellness curriculum. It's not enough. It's not nearly enough, but for what they get, it is helping support their development. We struggle at the high school, and I would say that's our biggest need right now because we don't have an Emily or a Tara there. We have Donna, who is incorporated into certain parts of the physical education. We have snippets in our advisory, trying to think guidance seminars, but it's definitely not a consistent, cohesive health curriculum, and I do think that is absolutely a need. We talked about the adoption of the new standards as far as history. We're looking at different ways to present this new curriculum. So I have taken and shifted some money from past payments of Inspire and then reallocated them to support some of the resources that we are going to use to implement some of the social studies standards. And it's interesting as we talk about different teachers having different levels of comfort with technology, as we present different platforms such as, do you want a textbooks, or do you want an online textbook, or a hybrid of something? The teachers who are more comfortable with technology are going to opt for something that is more, I would say, online, that's changing, that's evolving. One of the benefits of having an online platform is that when you talk about adaptive technology, some of these online textbooks, all you have to do is go up into a box and click on a Lexile number, which is a reading level, and it will change the reading level of that text. So, which is huge. Just that small click, you have the same content, those same ideas being presented to somebody who is maybe not reading at a 10th grade level, but reading at a 7th grade level. It also has functionality where you can highlight vocabulary words and just click that word, and it will bring you to another screen where it will define the word, show you pictures. And so, again, capitalizing on some of these adaptive technology pieces that are embedded in textbooks is a huge plus for our students. So our social studies teachers are leaning into that direction. They still don't want to abandon a textbook. I think the conversation is to have at least one set, which we can support through shifting and reallocating, again, money that was spent last year to implement science that's already paid for, but to move it into kind of that social studies and science area. We talked about definitely the need for more Chromebooks in our schools so that we can make sure that all teachers are comfortable with technology and they are regularly being used within the classroom. And we also talked about just increasing the time the math specialist from going from a 0.5 to a 0.1. As Jim had talked a little bit about Tier 1. Tier 1 is everybody is in the classroom. And if we can improve or always look to improve our instructional practices, the hope is that you will have less students who need support beyond that classroom instruction piece of it. And so we have tools to do that, and sometimes it's just a matter of bridging those tools with the teacher so they know how to use them, so then they can improve upon their instructional practices so that the kids benefit from it. So then if you look to my requested line items, again, the only where I've just shifted funding, so the change from FY19 to FY20 is 0. Any questions? Brian's like, never heard that come out of my mouth before.
I've never heard the
He's
word
like, "What?"
zero out of Kim's mouth.
It was hard for me to pronounce that, but 0.
Comments or questions from the committee? Anybody? Oh, Dina, sorry. Should have looked to my right first.
You know I always have a comment. I take issue with your first statement, Kim, saying that we provide the curriculum that is needed for our students, because we do not have a wellness program that is anywhere near what they need. Catherine pointed out we don't have really a business section in the high school right now. That's unfortunate. It's discouraging and not something that I want to see go forward.
Right.
We have been working to try and get wellness in this district for a long time now. I don't even know how many years, and it needs to be stated, we are not providing what we need.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Easy. Look at that, Kim. All right. So tomorrow we're going to be meeting here at 6 to do special education, technology, maintenance operations, and other. Brian has something to say. No? Okay. And I believe that's it.
Yeah.
Did you
So
have
I do
something
one
to
thing
say
to say.
before I adjourn? Nope.
Yeah. So just to put some context to what Jim was saying, because it's not only do you have a high quality and effective leadership team, you've just got good people. You've got 9 really good people sitting around the table, but also the staff. And I'm sitting here looking at Matt Haley, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, sitting in the audience. So you were at Newbury Elementary as a 2nd grader when I was principal, 3rd grader, graduated 2013-ish. Am I right? Holy cow. 2013, went to BC, got your teaching degree, and he's now a math teacher. So we have people, there's proof in the pudding of the quality of Triton. And there's often, I've heard Dina for 20 years say, we have to sell Triton to Triton because just the geography and the location of where we are. There are people who automatically assume negative things, but it's an amazing place. I'm concerned what Dina said about we're not giving everything we need to equip our teachers and our administrators and our leaders to do their jobs. So I don't want to any way make it sound like we've arrived. But back to what Narissa said, it's because of amazing people, 425-ish amazing people that we're seeing the success we are seeing. So, sorry, Matt, had to put you on the spot.
Go ahead, Dina.
Can I just add one thing? I wholeheartedly agree with you, and that does need to be said, that we have awesome staff here, incredible teachers. I have 2 children that went through this system, both pursuing advanced degrees, so they got their foundation here, and I thank you all for that with all of my heart, which is why it disturbs me that we are not offering that to our kids now. And it's been stated several times, and Narissa, you're right to keep saying it. It is not the towns, although that is the source we have to go to draw from, but we need their help. Like you had stated, Brian, we need the selectmen and town managers and not just within our district, throughout this state, working together to let the state know that this is not acceptable. We keep saying time and time again, our children are the future. Well, we need to put our money where our mouth is, and we haven't been doing that. I am normally an optimistic person and see the glasses half full. As far as I can see right now, especially with this year, it's not even half full, half empty. It is empty. And I don't know what we can do about it, except to all pull in the right direction.
Any other comments? Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Thank you. We will see you tomorrow night. Nope. No. Totally good. Thank you.
Do you want to use blue pen?
Yes, blue is fine. Thank you. No, using blue.
I mean, I did quick math, so it's like 45.
Only because my kids steal all the other